Today we're taking a quick look at and showing you how to install the front strut and rear shock package here, fitting all 1994 through 2004 Mustangs. Now you should be considering this very affordable kit if you are looking to replace some higher mileage or maybe blown out shocks and struts to get your SN95 riding like new again, all for right around that mid $200 price point. So right off the bat, these options that we're talking about here today will strictly be an OE style replacement as opposed to something that will deliver a firmer ride quality, lower ride height, or something like that. Now with that being said, this might be the perfect option for SN95 owners looking to possibly return their car to stock again for whatever reason, or just maybe replace some higher mileage blown out dampers. Now this is going to be a brand new set to get your SN riding like new again and do so comfortably but without breaking the bank. Now this is also going to be a complete kit in regards to both your front and rear dampers. So does not include any springs. You will have to provide that on your own if you wanted to totally go back to stock, maybe a stock set of springs or something with a very mild drop overall. But again, if you're just looking for a factory style damper for south of 300 bucks, this is certainly going to be a great option. Moving into construction, and not a whole lot to talk about here as these are an OE replacement, but what you will find is that the shocks and struts have been manufactured from heavy duty steel before given a shiny black powder coat to keep the dampers looking good for years to come. You are getting brand new hardware in addition to brand new bushings for the twin tube shocks and struts. And finally, they are backed by a 2-year or 24,000 mile warranty just in case you run into any issues. Price point for the kit will hover right around 250 bucks, give or take a bit, which for, again, front and rear setup does seem pretty reasonable overall. And as always, feel free to browse the rest of our suspension category here at AM, just in case you are looking for something that is going to be a little bit more performance focused instead. Last but not least, let's talk about the install here, and the site's going to call this a soft 3 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, taking you a couple of hours or so to knock out from start to finish. But now to give you a better idea of how this one might go down in the garage or driveway at home, let's throw it out to the shop for our detailed walkthrough and tool breakdown.
All right, for this install, we're going to need a pry bar, a 1/2 inch and a 3/8 impact driver, and we're also going to need a 3/8 ratchet. We're going to need a 16, 18, and 24 mil socket, pair of vice grips, 21 mil wrench, 18 mil wrench, 1/4 inch ratchet, various extensions for 1/4 inch if you need it, and we're also going to need a E8 inverted torque socket. And not shown on camera, we're going to need a floor jack and a pair of jack stands if you need them. Today we're going to be installing front struts and rear shocks on our Mustang. Let's get started. All right, first thing, we're going to remove our sway bar end link. We're going to want to use a pair of vice grips to keep it from spinning. You can attach right on the body of the end link. And then you're going to use a 15 millimeter socket on the bottom end to remove the nut. Remove your vice grip. Sway bar won't move, but you'll be able to lower your control arm so you can get access to your strut. All right, now we can remove our 24 millimeter nut that holds on our bracket onto the strut bolts. Slide the bracket out of the way, and now we can access our strut bolts. All right, next we are going to remove the wheel speed sensor. It is a E8 inverted torque socket. Get on there. This way we have a little bit more room to get our strut out. And you can just wiggle the wheel speed sensor out. And if yours does not come out, you may need to pry it out with a small pry bar or a flathead screwdriver. All right, now we can remove our nuts from our front strut. Use our 24 millimeter socket and a 21 millimeter wrench on the back end. All right, once we have the nuts off, we can leave the bolts attached to support that tension from the spring, and we're gonna move on to the upper side. All right, now that we're in the engine bay, I went ahead and placed a floor jack underneath a spring cradle so we can get some support when the strut comes out. We're gonna use a 21 millimeter socket for the top strut mount. Remove our cap and our bushing. All right, now that we have the upper strut mount, we're gonna move back down. We're gonna lower our floor jack a bit so we can get just enough clearance to remove the top of the strut out of the mount. Now that we have some tension off, remove our top bolt, our bottom bolt. And your strut might be seasoned there a bit. You might need to spray some penetrating oil and use a pry bar to wiggle it out. Now that we have our strut removed, we're going to repeat the same steps on the other side. All right, now that we have our vehicle lowered for the rear shocks, we're going to remove some of the carpet and the paneling to get to our strut bolt. We're going to remove this piece, slide that out of the way. Our vehicle has been taken apart multiple times, so some of our pieces might be loose. You may need some equipment and a tool or two to remove some panels. And once you slide that out of the way, you can see your shock bolt. All right, now that we have better access, we are going to use a 15 mil deep socket on our air ratchet to get out the rear shock bolt. All right, we're going to repeat the same steps for the other side, and once we lift up the vehicle, those shocks will just drop right out. All right, now that we are under the vehicle, we're going to use a 18 millimeter wrench with a 15 millimeter socket to remove our lower shock bolt. We're going to need to break this nut free, and then use our air ratchet to remove this. And with a little bit of support, we can remove the bolt. And we can remove our strut assembly, and you're going to repeat the same steps for the other side. All right, now we're going to take our new shock assembly and we're going to install our hardware with the flat bottom down and our rubber bushing in. We're going to take that and install it into the body, and we can rest it on the mounting bracket right there. Get our bolt, reuse our hardware. All right, your bracket tabs might be a little bit squeezed in from previous installation or from your old hardware. You might need to separate these a bit with a pair of pliers to get your new strut in there. All right, now that we have our tabs bent out a little bit, we can center our shock. Tighten this up with our 15 mil or 18 mil. All right, we're gonna wanna come back and retorque this down to factory spec and then repeat the same steps for the other side. All right, what I had to do was use the floor jack on our rear axle assembly to kind of jack up the strut a little bit into the tower, probably because it's not uncompressed a little bit more, but just to get that extra travel so we can get our bolt in there. Use the floor jack, install our new hardware and our nut. And your new hardware is going to be an 18 millimeter socket. We're going to tighten that down with our air ratchet. All right, and once you have that tightened down a bit, you're going to come back and retorque everything down to factory spec, and then you're going to repeat the same steps for the other side. All right, now that we have everything torqued down and tightened down in the rear, we are going to insert our paneling and our covers back in the trunk. Slide that over your strut tower, strut assembly, move your rear mat back into place. All right, once that's fitted in there, you will have various clips and possibly a 10 millimeter nut to remove to get all this out. But again, because our vehicle has been apart so many times, we are gonna leave it loose for now. All right, for our front strut, we are going to reuse the factory boot on our front strut, slide that over, and now we're gonna reach under and push it up through the body. All right, once you have that through the body, with some assistance below, slide over your bushing. And you may need to compress the strut a little bit and push it more up into the body to get some threads. All right, now that we have the strut assembly pushed through the body all the way, we can put our cap back on and our new nut. And the included hardware is gonna be a 24 millimeter. Tighten that down. All right, we're gonna torque that down and we're gonna repeat the same process for the other side. All right, to help get the strut into the tower of the body, I went ahead and installed the lower bolt. I didn't tighten anything down, just slip it in there, just to give you some assistance with the jack in place. And with our jack still in place, we are gonna push the caliper bracket and the brake assembly forward into the strut and try to feed our top bolt in. Again, if you are using a floor jack, you may need to make adjustments to get some tension on or off to feed your top bolt in. All right, at this point, you can remove your jack once you have the two bolts in place, but for now, we're just gonna leave it right there. We're gonna install our two nuts on our top and bottom strut. And then we're gonna tighten this down with our 24 and our 21 wrench. All right, then we're gonna wanna come back and retorque everything down to factory specs. And then we're gonna repeat the same process for the other side. And one thing to take note when we are raising the control arm back into the strut assembly and the knuckle, we are gonna wanna align the sway bar end link into the positioning spot for it. And we're gonna clamp our vice grip down so that doesn't move. All right, once that's tight, we can come back and retorque everything. And then if you did remove that on the other side, we're also gonna repeat those same steps. All right, now we're gonna install our wheel speed sensor. Get that lined up. Tighten this down with our E8 torque socket, inverted torques. All right, now you're gonna wanna repeat that same step for the other side. All right, now we can install our bracket for our wheel speed sensor. Place it over the top and bottom strut bolt. Attach our nut. And we can tighten this down using our 24mm socket. Once that's in, you can clip back in any of the brackets for the sensor wire that you removed. And you're gonna wanna repeat the same steps for the other side. All right, that wraps up our install for front struts and rear shocks on a 94-04 Mustang. For everything Mustang related, keep it right here at AmericanMuscle.com.